Now to India, where the number of refugees who've crossed from East Pakistan is rapidly approaching 9 million. The refugees are still coming in at the rate of 30,000 a day. Here at Tentulia camp, 10 families are admitted every day. Many of them say they've come to escape the Pakistani army.
He's going to another place.
This man farmed a 1-acre plot near the border village of Hawalkali. He abandoned his house and set out for India with his wife and 5 children after Pakistani troops had arrived at the village. The troops were seeking information about the Bangladesh Liberation Army who were harassing government forces in the area. He claimed that a neighbor who refused to help was shot along with his family. He also said that 500 people in a neighboring village were killed for collaborating with the Liberation Army.
8 or 9 people were killed.
Did he see this happen?
He has seen this.
How did it happen?
Another man said he saw 4 or 5 people killed in his village after what he alleges was a looting raid by the Pakistani army. He claimed his own home was burned and women in the village raped.
And his brothers?
There is no way.
It's impossible to check the refugees' allegations, but camp officials say that all new arrivals tell similar stories. Whether their fears of the Pakistani army are real or imagined, there is some powerful compulsion that drives them to exchange their homes for the uncertainties of life in the Indian refugee camps. Conditions at Tentulia, as in other Indian camps, leave much to be desired. But people are not starving, at least not yet. In East Pakistan itself, the situation may be much worse. Reports speak of widespread famine and disease, but this is impossible to confirm. Pakistan insists that all relief for the East must pass through its own government agencies first. But one small relief effort, organized from a Calcutta back street, has ignored these requirements. It calls itself Operation Omega, and it's already run 2 relief convoys directly into East Bengal, delivering 2 tons of food. Omega's leader is Roger Moody. He and 8 volunteers came out from England 2 months ago, determined to prove that political boundaries
yes, that's
could not
correct.
stand in the way of aid for the starving.
Well, the latest news, in fact, came from the British High Commission in a message received from the Foreign Office. Yes, if you just hold on, I'll tell you. Apparently,
They was trying to powder. If we can get something M7 powder, even for our own... All you do is get a helicopter and fly over and spray the whole place with powder.
On one of their trips across the frontier, Pakistani troops intercepted and arrested all 4 members of the party. But this hasn't dulled Moody's enthusiasm.
What is the object of the missions you're planning at the moment?
well, we're planning 2. We're going to 2 different points. We're taking with us 2 doctors, as well as relief supplies. And our basic aim is to assess the conditions of people in areas perhaps 100 miles or so apart. Then we will come back to Calcutta. We will report back to relief agencies as well as our own headquarters in London. Exactly the conditions we found, exactly what we think will happen to the people in the next few weeks, which are going to be very sparse weeks as far as food is concerned. We will then try and encourage the relief agencies here to put people into an across-the-border relief effort, which is many times bigger than Omega could possibly hope to achieve on its own.
You are probably the most recent people to come out of East Pakistan. What are conditions like in there?
At the moment, they're all right, in that the morale of the people in the areas in which we travel, which was approximately 40 square miles, is very high indeed. They've also got protein foods. However, they are going to run very short indeed of carbohydrates, rice, which is their staple diet, in a few weeks' time. Now, because they're situated between 2 markets, the markets inside East Pakistan and markets inside India, which they cannot reach, because their purchasing power is virtually nil, they are going to suffer very acutely from carbohydrate famine within a few weeks' time. And this could affect hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people just within the border areas.
People are talking about a massive famine. Do you see this as imminent?
I don't see it as imminent over the whole of the country, but I think it's inevitable in a few weeks' time, unless massive grain imports over the whole of the country, uniformly, are commenced immediately.
The beliefs of the Omega team are simple. They practice non-violence and believe in the brotherhood of man. They see themselves as pathfinders who can show the bigger and better equipped relief organizations just how much could be achieved in the face of official opposition if there were sufficient determination and enthusiasm. Omega's idealism is refreshing, but the political realities still have to be faced. Pakistan troops control nearly all of East Bengal, and the cause of an independent Bangladesh has to be promoted from Indian soil by means such as this conference sponsored by the Mahatma Gandhi Peace Foundation. Delegates from 24 countries attended, although no governments were represented. The conference's chairman, Indian socialist leader Narayan, denied the problem was an internal affair of Pakistan.
You know how vitally that situation affects India, not only on account of the presence of 8.5 million refugees, whose numbers are daily mounting up, but also because it creates instability and social tensions in the whole eastern region of India, thwarts normal administration and development programs in the area, and enables Pakistan to achieve a demographic redistribution of its population at the cost of India in terms both of communal composition and population parity between its western and eastern wings. Most important of all, the situation in Bangladesh is a continuing threat to the security of India and the peace of the subcontinent, perhaps of the whole of South Asia.
Despite the popular support for Bangladesh, the Indian government has so far held back from granting official recognition to the Bangladesh government in exile. A Bangladesh flag on top of the former Pakistan High Commission, a nameplate on the wall, and an Indian soldier on guard outside is as far as Delhi is prepared to go. Mushtaq Ahmed is foreign minister in the Bangladesh provisional government. What justification did he have for expecting international recognition?
The governments will respond to this.
We certainly believe that as we are democratically elected government, through us the desire of the people is expressed. We certainly do demand recognition from the democratic world, because we have won the election, a fair election, and out of 169 seats, we own 167 seats. We are a legitimate government and legitimately claim the recognition from other governments of the world.
Do you believe that a political solution is possible?
This needs to be spelled out. A solution is always there. We want our independence. By that we mean we should be allowed to live in our free country, within our territory, with our own flag, with the dignity and honor of a free nation. And that is the solution we understand. There are examples of political solution. Even in 1947, the birth of independent India, the birth of independent Pakistan was done through political solution negotiation, not through a war. So if you mean that way, yes, there is several chance to force the Yahya's force to withdraw from my sacred land, who are aggressors from 1500 miles away.
But do you believe that your Liberation Army can conquer the rest of East Pakistan?
If history speaks the truth, if the indomitable energy of the determined nation of 75 million of people is to be taken into account, we are certain and sure that we will win this war. We will certainly.
A A political settlement that will allow the refugees to return home is as far away as it's ever been. Meanwhile, the refugees themselves are having to adapt to new calamities. The rainy season's now well advanced in West Bengal, and several large camps have had to be abandoned because of floods. In some places, the roads are the only ground above water, and displaced refugees crowd every inch of them. Here on the Calcutta-Bongaon road, their flimsy shacks stretch without a break for 20 miles. The Bongaon district covers 300 square miles, and 250 of them are underwater. Food and medical supplies are still getting through, but on a reduced scale. Some camps can only be reached by boat. There's no clean water for drinking or washing, and there are no latrines. Cholera has broken out again in some camps, and other diseases are appearing on the roadsides like scabies, typhoid and pneumonia. And another hazard are poisonous snakes hidden beneath the flood waters. As thousands more refugees crowd into this corner of India, families have become separated. Parents have lost their children, and some children have come across the border on their own. Some of them have been unofficially adopted by families in the camps. The others, when nobody wants them, are brought here to Kelagar. Kelagar, which means playhouse, opened last month. There are 32 children here at present, but soon there'll be over 200. Mrs. Matrai Devi is the inspiration behind it. She sends her workers into the camps to look for stray children. They're not all orphans. Most of them have simply lost their parents, but their chances of ever finding them again are negligible. Amina, for instance, was found alone by the roadside. She's 3 years old, and all she'll say is her own name.
नाम बोल की नाम हैं की नाम तारातारी सामने दिखा तारातारी सामने दिखा
When they were first brought here, the children were filthy, sick, hungry and bewildered. They were bathed in disinfectant and their heads were shaved. They were fed and reclothed. But for some of them, their problems are not just physical. The flight from East Pakistan left raw emotional scars. One 5-year-old says he saw his mother shot by soldiers as they left their village. Such experiences are not the stuff sweet dreams are made of. Even if there were a political settlement in East Pakistan, it's difficult to see how these children could ever return home. We asked Mrs. Devi about
these
their
children
future.
got?
Well, I really don't know, because this orphanage has got a sanction only up to December. So we really don't know. Government says that they will ultimately go back to their country when their country is free or some arrangement has been made for the return of the refugees, which I think is very difficult.
Mrs. Daly, thank you.
The cost of care for all the refugees is now put at a staggering £1.5 million a day. According to India's Prime Minister, Mrs. Gandhi, it's a burden India cannot bear for very much longer. There's an understandable feeling of bitterness among the Indians about the poor international response to the crisis. They say that foreign aid so far received only refugees. All promises of help are eventually fulfilled. There may be enough to keep the relief program going for another 2 months. But as one official bitterly remarked, India has kept the refugees alive for 6 months already. But the spectre that really haunts the Indian authorities is the prospect of millions more refugees crossing the border. The Indians believe that widespread famine in East Bengal is certain. Some officials are anticipating as many as 20 million refugees in India by the end of the year. If that happens, it'll be virtually impossible for Mrs. Gandhi to resist any longer the pressures to create her own
Mr. John Stonehouse, wearing a suit, and Mr. Bruce Douglas Mann didn't have to look far for evidence of the suffering that turmoil in East Pakistan has created. These women, queuing patiently in a seemingly endless line for their family's one meal of the day, are just a few of nearly 300,000 refugees who've now fled across the border into India. Almost 100,000 are in camps like this one. The rest are waiting at the gate for admission or have found shelter with relatives. The Indian government is providing rice, 100 grams per adult a day, and paying for other food bought by the volunteers who are helping run the camps. Each refugee carries an identity and ration card which states the number of people in the family and the amount of food they're entitled to.
Right. Here's your card. Hope you enjoy your meal.
The threat of some epidemic is real. Though new water supplies are being hastily provided, sanitation is primitive. These new arrivals are being inoculated against typhoid and cholera, as well as smallpox. The MPs were anxious to hear why the refugees had been forced to leave their homes and take refuge in India, their traditional enemy. This man related how his father, mother and brother had all been killed by soldiers of the West Pakistan Army in Jikagacha, a village only 13 miles away. Most of the people in the camp were women and children. One young mother told Mr. Stonehouse how her husband, who worked in an army cantonment as a clerk, was simply lined up with 24 other men and shot by the soldiers. She herself, though pregnant, was beaten unconscious with the butt of a rifle. Like some 30% of the refugees, this woman was a Muslim, evidence that the bond of a common religion has not meant as much to the Punjabi soldiers as their hatred of the Bengalis. The two camps the MPs saw were trying hard to cope, but when the monsoon rains begin in a month's time, conditions are likely to deteriorate. International aid will be welcome to help care for people who cannot be moved far from the border, hoping as they must to return to their homes before long. At Mama Vagina camp, opened just that day to cope with a new wave of refugees, I asked the two MPs about their impressions of what they'd seen and heard. Mr. Douglas Mann, from the stories you've heard today of the killing across the border, how do you assess it?
Well, I can't assess the scale of it, but it is certainly very serious. We've spoken to many people from many different villages who have confirmed the stories that have already appeared in the British press. They are both Hindus and Muslims. The stories of troops coming into the village, sometimes of burnings of the entire village, sometimes calling out those who had been associated with the Awami League. And sometimes the atrocities have also been committed, we are told, by Bihari Muslims. But they're directed against Bengalis, both Hindus and Muslims.
Well, this has gone beyond an internal sovereign affair, because it's quite clear that neither the Pakistan Army nor the new Bangladesh administration can cope. And with a major problem of this description, the international community must move to do something. It's not good enough to wash our hands of this responsibility and say that we do not interfere in the affairs of a sovereign state.
The two MPs ended their day by visiting the border itself. The road was crowded with ox carts and refugee families making their way on foot. At the river crossing at Boira, the MPs could look across into East Pakistan. Mr. Stonehouse is primarily concerned to deal with the widespread hunger many observers foresee. Mr. Douglas Mann and his committee are fighting for a ceasefire and political justice for the Bengalis. Those aims are equally important, but at present just as equally far from fulfillment. Richard Lindy, News at 10, Bongan.